Celebrating leaders in Rochester's unique and vibrant business community, we'll meet entrepreneurs whose passion and perseverance have helped push through life's challenges. Join us as we share their stories and journeys to success. It's time to be inspired.
Beth, thank you very much for being in Be Inspired, a show that we develop to interview people like you who are out there helping the community, in your case, doing some consulting, coaching. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, actually, I started at General Motors. I worked there for 30 years. I went there for a year thinking I was going to be there a year and walked out 30 years later because opportunities opened up for me. And then I got about 4 years before retirement and I returned to school. I said to my husband, what would you think if I went back to school? And he goes, why now? I thought you were going to retire. And I said I wasn't ready to retire, and he's really supportive. So I went to University of Buffalo and I finished a PhD in communication in 2008. But I got my real education 30 years at General Motors.
Wow. That's a great mix of both the academic and real world experience. What were some of the roles that you had at General Motors? What were some of the things you were involved in there?
I actually started working on the line. I went there for 1 year. I was looking for a way to support the family. Yeah, making fuel systems, carburetors.
That's great.
And then I did some backup setup work when women didn't really do backup setup. And then they were looking for employee involvement facilitators. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what it was, but I thought it sounded more interesting than what I was doing. So I got accepted into that role, and that started my journey. That was actually cultural engagement before it was a buzzword. And in the 80s, we actually brought union and management together and found ways to involve the people through employee involvement groups, and it was a phenomenal experience.
That is wonderful. Now you create your own, practice your own organization. So tell us a little bit about the creation of your company.
Okay. When I started out, I left General Motors and about 1,000 people retired at the same time. Well, I never thought. I knew my skill and I knew I was pretty good at it, but I didn't get anybody's contact information. So when I started out, no one knew me. I go, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I went out there and I started presenting everywhere for free, just to get known. And little by little, doors began to open up. And so it was really a process of getting known in that manner.
What are the basic principles that you teach to people to get out of the emails or the texting and go and pick up the phone or call to a face-to-face meeting, or let's go and sit down, have a meal, and let's talk? How you are helping people to get out of that tendency that everybody wants just to text?
I've researched great places to work for the last 10 years, and a lot of the things that they do are very fascinating. Some organizations have a no technology Friday. You know, they tell people, you know, find ways to interact with people. Other organizations really take a look at ways to bring people from different generations together in a mentoring relationship. Your younger generations, your Gen Z and your millennials, they want mentors. They want somebody to help them. That has been their role growing up, and so that's what they're looking for in the workplace. So I help to create opportunities for mentorships. One of the aerospace organizations I worked with, they had a lot of boomers, and 10,000 boomers are retiring every day. So I mean, people are leaving, and they were worried about the knowledge going out the door. So we just helped them to find ways to create relationships, and they even put a portal on their website that showed who was available for mentoring and what were the types of issues that people were looking for, and it created those relationships, which once people understand other people, a lot of the barriers and walls go down.
I love your expertise. It's something that a lot of business leaders can fall prey to. So for example, I've found when I've run organizations that people stop telling you what they really think because you're the boss. So what advice would you give to business leaders, organizational leaders watching the show as to how to avoid having blind spots or how to find their blind spots?
I spoke on that today. Jahari's window says that we all have blind spots, but it really is about opening up your open space so that people understand, you know, what's going on with you. When you take a look at individuals, they really do, they will behave in a manner that they're taught how to behave. For example, if the culture is a low trust culture and they have been taught, we don't need your opinion, they're going to hold back. But if you create a culture where it's safe for people to say their opinion, then your head's above everybody else. One of the things that I suggest is really working on the level of trust in the organization, because think of the way you communicate with people you trust, and then think of the way you communicate with people you don't trust. And it costs organizations time and money if people are trying to second guess what they should say instead of what they're really saying. So we work on the culture of the organization to improve the ability for people and make it safe for people to communicate, and actually put it in their values, and then have people held accountable for that. I was talking to a friend last night who happens to be a pilot for United, and she flies 777s back and forth to Dubai. And we were talking about communication, and she told me that the communication in the cockpit changed based on a horrible crash that happened in 1978, where the leader, the captain, wasn't listening to the second in command. And they were trying to say, they were circling, and they were trying to say, we're running out of fuel. We're running out of fuel. And he wasn't listening. And they crashed, and 10 people were killed in Portland. And it started a whole new process where a captain in the airplane is expected to ask the opinions of the co-pilot and the other people in the cockpit. And likewise, those people are expected to give their opinion. And if they don't, they can be written up. So when you bring that into the workplace and create a culture where people feel safe to say whatever it is that's on their mind, and actually hold them accountable, have that in their job description, that this is the expectation, and then reinforce it. When you see somebody doing a good job of communicating, recognize it. Let people know that that's what we expect here. And then it grows little by little so that people understand it's safe to really give my opinion.
That is powerful because the essence of any relationship and the foundation is trust. Without trust, there is no team.
Right.
Now, what do you do when trust has been broken? How can you help to reestablish the trust? Tell us a little bit about some strategies that you have used in the past to rebuild trust.
It takes a long time to rebuild trust, and you can lose it like that. So if I work with an organization that has very low trust, first of all, I get out there and I do an assessment, and I talk to people to understand the whys. Why isn't there trust in the organization? And then I bring it back to leadership in a way. I never say what people said, but it all falls into different groups. I call it buckets, and there's usually 3 buckets. And they'll tell me why trust fell apart. My supervisor tells me one thing, and 2 days later I find out it wasn't the truth. They say we're not working Saturday, and then I get a call on Friday afternoon, and I had plans with my family, and then I can't be with them. Little things like that will undermine the level of trust in the organization, and people tend to think it's huge things that undermine trust. I also have heard of organizations that people understand that there's going to be layoffs or the organization is closing on the news. There's no communication in the organization. So I really work with leadership to understand how to be transparent and have open communication as much as they can, and to really help people understand moving forward where are we headed, what's your role in getting us there, and as things occur, I tell leaders, tell them, this is what I know as of this moment, and I will update it if something else happens. But you start to build trust little by little, and a lot of it has to do with the competency of the leadership and the way in which they communicate. Are they interested in hearing what you have to say? Because that'll build trust as well as engagement. And it's little behaviors consistently done over time that will build trust in an organization. But it's not a quick fix. It takes a while.
Well, thank you. We'll be back with more after these messages.
So what's your approach around creating an accountability culture?
Mm-hmm. And that's a huge piece of it. And that's an issue in a lot of organizations. But one of the issues is there's not clear roles and responsibilities, and people don't really have the tools and the skills for what they need to do. And if it's not a safe culture, they don't feel safe to say, I need some help. So I tell leaders, you need clear roles and responsibilities, support for the individual, tell them what the expectation is, when it's due, have check-in points along the way, but hold them accountable. Let them know what the desired outcome is, but don't micromanage them. Get out of their way, but hold them accountable by checkpoints. Where are you at this point? And helping them, support them by removing barriers and really keeping people accountable for the results that you desire. And it really is a process, and it's coaching. Sadly, too many organizations have leaders that don't have the training. You know, they take a good employee and they say, oh, we'll make them a supervisor. But a good employee does not make a good supervisor without the skills and the gifts. And so it really is about giving them what they need to succeed. 50% of new supervisors fail within the first 18 months. So it really is the opportunity to give them what they need to succeed.
Mm-hmm. And we touched on technology a little bit earlier. Given the rise of texting, instant messaging, email, SharePoint, all these different things, do you feel that interorganizational communication has gotten better or worse in the last few years, and why?
Yes.
Yes.
It's gotten better in some respects, and it's got much worse in some respects because people rely on technology and they utilize technology. I tell people, don't ever use technology, email or texting, if there's an issue, because it leaves too much to people guessing and perceptions. But yet, in some instances, it's fast, it's quick, you can get information out. So it's about knowing when to use it and when not to. It's about taking a look at the best way to communicate, and with different generations in the workplace, it's about understanding how people want to be communicated with and to, and put that all together so that the messaging gets through in a timely fashion. But there's also an opportunity for people to come together and just talk to one another.
Well, that's very powerful. And one of the things that I see a lot and organizations invest in is do these assessments of personality types and leadership types. And there is DISC, and there is, you know, many other.
Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, all those. And what's your take around that? Because people spend to the point that you get lost. It's like, okay, your definition of who you are, and you have all these descriptions and studies and all that. So what is the right balance?
I tell people I'm Myers-Briggs certified and Thomas Kilmann certified, and I use them if it will help the person in my coaching or in organizations. I've given whole organizations Myers-Briggs. And it helps them, but I tell them it's not an excuse. I say whatever their personality preference comes up. Certain personality preferences have trouble getting places on time according to Myers-Briggs. But you can't say, well, I'm an ESFP, so I can't be on time. No, it's good information to tell yourself that I may have some struggles getting someplace, so I need to create a plan to ensure that I get where I need to be on time.
I think that's a great topic, because you do hear these different terms, these different models thrown around, and sometimes people do fall back on them to say, well, that's not my
that's who I am.
Personality type,
Yeah.
right? And it's really about having the energy to flex, to be able to work with other types.
It's self-awareness. That's a huge piece.
Very true. And you mean self-awareness is just about your strengths and your weaknesses?
No, it's about self-awareness, about how you communicate and how you affect others. It's about your emotional intelligence, understanding what goes on for you and how you come across. Because at tone, somebody determines whether they are for you or against you. And yet the interesting thing is the path through our brain goes through the limbic center where our emotions are stored. So very often it'll hook an emotion, it'll change how you come across. So if people have that knowledge, they can take a step back and say, I'm feeling a little uptight, I need to watch the tone I come across with. And so it's those kinds of skills that can really help a person to raise the bar on the relationships they build and how they communicate with one another.
It's incredible valuable be able not only to have your self-awareness around that, but it's also valuable to understand others, to be able to read others, to be able to interact with different type of personalities. So now you can understand better them, you can have a better strategy on how to transfer your communication to them, how to engage them.
Sure.
And I think that is a fundamental aspect. Now, what is there is a fine line using all these wonderful techniques between doing that and manipulation, because there is a risky element of, you get so good on this thing and then you become fake. It's not anymore who you are. You lose identity and you are more like a robot that is basically using all these techniques and figure it out. How you avoid that?
Well, it's about having integrity and being upfront and being honest. And just because if you notice that somebody is nonverbal indicates something, I tell people if you're leading a meeting and all of a sudden you see somebody, nonverbally close off, don't put any meaning to it. But if somebody's nonverbals change quickly, it's an opportunity to ask some questions. Are we all on the same page? Are there any issues we need to bring to the table? Do we need to talk about this right now? They're just indicators that help you to lead more efficiently and more effectively, but it's not about pigeonholing anybody.
And thank you for clarifying that, because I always compare like a martial arts. You learn the technique, but you don't learn to kill people, you don't learn to damage people, you learn to defend, to respect, to honor people.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the beauty of techniques of communication and all that, is to honor, to exalt and help others to grow, and I think that's an important aspect. Now, the future of communications. Communication has been always, this is the, we communicate, since we are babies, we start crying, and there's a way of communicating, right? Crying, expressing our emotions. What is the future? How you see the future, the evolution of communication of humans? We know now text and all that, but what will be happening? What if you have a crystal ball, what do you think will be the evolution of communications? Will it be virtual things? And
I really think, well, technology's here to stay, obviously, but I really think we're going to go through a phase where people are going to start talking to people again. And because what's happening is relationships are how work gets done. And when people aren't communicating with one another, work isn't getting accomplished in an efficient manner. So I think we're going to see people coming back to face-to-face communication and finding ways to get to know one another and just come together with common goals and common purposes. That's what I believe. Because so many of my leaders say, you know, something's missing. Something's missing, that we really need to get people talking to people.
That is fundamental. Beth, you can give us beautiful, beautiful advice and knowledge, and really impressed of the things that you are doing out there and helping organizations to get better in their skills and their capacity to lead others. Thank you very much. I'm sure that in the future we'll have you back here in the program. But again, thank you for being with us in Inspire.
Thank you.
Coming up next week on Be Inspired, we'll learn about a new downtown business incubator for food entrepreneurs. To watch today's episode and the complete interviews of our guests, go to rochesterfirst.com/beinspired. For more great talk with Rochester's entrepreneurs, listen to Poder 97.1 Saturdays at 9 a.m. For Mauricio Riveros, I'm Julio Saenz. We'll see you next week on Be Inspired.